Chapter 1. The problem with being a witch whose magic only works when she's annoyed is that December in Pinecrest Hollow is aggressively cheerful. I stood in the doorway of Bramble and Brew, the village's combination bookshop, cafe, gossip headquarters, watching Mrs. Hartwick string yet another garland of enchanted holly across the rafters. The berries pulsed with a nauseating rhythm, like tiny red heartbeats determined to spread joy whether you wanted it or not. "Thistle, dear," Mrs. Hartwick called down. Her wings, she was half pixie, though she'd never admit which half, leaving a trail of silver dust. "You're blocking the doorway, and Cornelius needs to bring in the wassail barrels." Cornelius, an extremely elderly dragon shifter who refused to shift because "my knees aren't what they used to be," grunted behind me. His cart, piled with wooden barrels that smelled aggressively of cinnamon and cloves, nudged my hip. "Sorry," I muttered, stepping aside. As I did, my boot caught on the welcome mat, hand-woven by the village's well-meaning weaving circle, decorated with the words "Blessed Yule" in letters that changed color every 3 seconds, and I stumbled directly into a display of crystallized ginger snowflakes. The jar shattered, and because I was irritated at the cheerfulness, at my clumsiness, at the fact that my cottage's chimney had been stolen by a family of very persistent ravens, my magic flared. The ginger snowflakes didn't just scatter across the floor, they multiplied. Within seconds, the entire shop was knee-deep in crystallized ginger, each piece shaped like a perfect 6-pointed snowflake, and they were still coming. They fountained from my hands like some sort of demented winter miracle, piling up against the bookshelves, burying Cornelius's cart, coating Mrs. Hartwick's carefully arranged display of a very shifter Christmas romance novels. "Thistle Moonwhisper," Mrs. Hartwick descended from the rafters with the gravitas of a disappointed grandmother. "This is the 3rd time this week." I know. I tried to cut off the magic, but annoyance at my own incompetence only made it worse. Now the ginger snowflakes were swirling in a miniature blizzard, and several customers had started eating them. "I'm sorry, I'll clean it up, I'll pay for damages, The door chimed, and Rowan Blackbriar walked in. 6 feet of brooding wolf shifter, silver-threaded black hair pulled into a knot that somehow made him look more intimidating instead of less, and eyes the color of a forest fire just before it goes out. He was wearing a wool coat that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and he had the expression of a man who'd rather be literally anywhere else. He took in the ginger snowflake chaos, his gaze tracking from the knee-deep drifts to Mrs. Hartwick's glare to my still glowing hands, and his jaw tightened. "Miss Moonwhisper," he said in a voice like gravel wrapped in smoke. "Again." My magic sputtered out immediately. Not because I'd gained control, but because Rowan Blackbriar, alpha of the Pinecrest pack and owner of half the hollow, had the unique ability to make me feel about 3 inches tall without even trying. "Mr. Blackbriar," I said, attempting dignity while standing in a pile of magical ginger. "Lovely weather we're having." His left ear twitched, just once, the wolf shifter equivalent of an eye roll. "My office?" he said. "Now." Chapter 2. Rowan Blackbriar's office was located above the Blackbriar distillery, which meant the entire building smelled like juniper and regret. I'd been here exactly twice before. Once when I'd accidentally turned the village fountain into a soup tureen, long story, and once when my attempt to magically repair my roof had instead caused every chimney in the hollow to sprout mushrooms. He gestured to the chair across from his desk, all dark wood and leather, the kind of masculine decor that screamed, "I am very serious and have no time for nonsense," and I sat, trying not to drip ginger snowflake residue on his very expensive rug. Rowan didn't sit. He stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back, looking out at the village square where workers were assembling the enormous Yule tree that would be lit on Midwinter's Eve. "Miss Moonwhisper," he began, and I could hear him choosing his words very, very carefully. "Do you understand why I've called you here? Because I accidentally created a ginger snowflake avalanche? Because this is the 9th magical incident you've caused this month." I blinked. "You're keeping count?" "Someone has to." He turned to face me, and for the first time, I noticed the shadows under his eyes. Rowan Blackbriar always looked like he'd stepped out of a brooding romance novel cover, but today he looked tired. The village council has filed a formal complaint. My stomach dropped. They wouldn't actually exile me, would they? No. His tone suggested he'd considered it. But they've requested supervision. Supervision. You need someone to monitor your magic usage until you gain better control. He paused, and his ears did that twitch thing again. The council has appointed me. I stared at him. Then I laughed because surely this was a joke. Rowan Blackbriar did not laugh. You're serious. Unfortunately. But we can barely stand to be in the same room. I'm aware. He moved behind his desk, finally sitting, and pulled out a scroll with an official-looking seal. The Midwinter Supervision Compact. You'll stay in the East Wing of Blackbriar House for the next 12 days, until the Yule celebration. I'll monitor your magical output, help you identify triggers, and hopefully prevent any further incidents. 12 days. My voice came out strangled. Living with you. In my home, not with me. The distinction seemed important to him. You'll have your own rooms. I've already arranged for your belongings to be moved. Without asking me? Miss Moonwhisper, your cottage currently has no chimney, no front door. The ravens have been very thorough, and as of yesterday, no roof over the bedroom. Where exactly did you plan to spend midwinter? He had a point. A frustrating, logical point. This is ridiculous, I said, but even I could hear the defeat in my voice. What if I refuse? Then the council will be forced to consider more permanent solutions. His gaze held mine, serious and unyielding. This is the compromise, Miss Moonwhisper. Take it. I wanted to argue. To tell him that I didn't need a babysitter, that my magic was my own business, that Rowan Blackbriar, with his perfect control and his perfect house and his perfect everything, could take his supervision compact and... My hands tingled. A small pile of ginger snowflakes appeared on his desk. Rowan looked at them, then at me. Then, very deliberately, he picked one up and ate it. Delicious, he said dryly. I assume you'll start packing? Chapter 3. Blackbriar House was, in a word, excessive. 3 stories of stone and timber, with windows that glowed like captured starlight, and gardens that somehow stayed green even in December. The kind of place that made you want to whisper and walk on tiptoe, certain that one wrong move would break some priceless heirloom. Rowan led me through the front hall, past portraits of stern-looking wolves in various states of shift, past furniture that looked like it had been carved by artisans who took their work very seriously, and up a sweeping staircase to the east wing. Your rooms, he said, pushing open a door. I stepped inside and immediately wanted to weep. Not because it was terrible, because it was perfect. A 4-poster bed with quilts the color of winter twilight, a fireplace already crackling with cedar-scented flames, a window seat overlooking the gardens with cushions that looked like clouds, and a view of the forest beyond. Bookshelves lined one wall, and someone, Rowan, had already filled them with titles about magical control, herb lore, and, inexplicably, a battered copy of The Witch's Guide to Surviving Family Gatherings. This is too much, I said. It's a guest room. He moved past me to adjust the fire, his movements economical and precise. Bathroom through there. If you need anything, pull the bell cord. Mrs. Ashford will... Master Rowan! A whirlwind of feathers and fury burst into the room, resolving into a short, round woman with a raven's wings tucked against her back and flour dusted across her apron. She took one look at me and beamed. Oh, you brought her, the poor dear! Before I could react, she'd pulled me into a hug that smelled like cinnamon rolls and wood smoke. I'm Mrs. Ashford, the housekeeper. We've heard all about you. I shot Rowan a look. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. Mrs. Ashford manages the household, he said stiffly. If you need... She'll need everything, won't she? Her cottage is in shambles. Those wretched ravens. Mrs. Ashford released me, hands fluttering. I've already drawn a bath, and Milo is bringing up tea. Proper tea. Not that swamp water you drink, Master Rowan, and tonight we're having honey-glazed ham with roasted root vegetables and my special Yule pudding. Mrs. Ashford, I'm sure Miss Moonwhisper would prefer— Nonsense! The poor thing is half-starved. Look at her! She grabbed my arms, turning me like a doll. When did you last have a decent meal? This morning? It had been toast, slightly burnt toast, that I'd eaten while standing over the sink. That's not a proper meal. Mrs. Ashford released me with a decisive nod. I'll have Milo bring up extra scones. You settle in, dear, and don't let Master Rowan intimidate you. His bark is worse than his bite. I don't bark, Rowan said. You growl, dear. It's very much the same thing. She patted his arm fondly, then swept out of the room in a flurry of feathers. Silence settled between us, awkward and thick. She's energetic, I offered. She raised me. Rowan's expression softened, just for a moment. After my parents died, she and Cornelius— yes, the dragon from the bookshop. They've been with this house for generations. Cornelius works for you? Cornelius tolerates me. There's a difference. He moved toward the door. Dinner is at 7. Try not to accidentally enchant anything before then. I'll do my best. He paused at the threshold, not quite looking at me. Miss Moonwhisper, the council's concerns aside, your cottage was dangerous. I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to help. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him, and I was alone in a room that felt like a fairy tale and a trap all at once. Chapter 4. Dinner was a disaster. Not because of the food. Mrs. Ashford's honey-glazed ham was transcendent, the kind of meal that made you reconsider your life choices and wonder why you'd ever bothered cooking for yourself, and not because of the company exactly. The disaster was entirely my fault. Rowan had set the dining room table, just 2 places at opposite ends of a table designed to seat 20, and we'd eaten in excruciating silence, the clink of silverware on china the only sound. He'd asked about my magical training. I'd explained, haltingly, that I was mostly self-taught, my family's grimoire more concerned with helpful household spells than actual control. He'd nodded, made notes in a leather journal, asked if I'd tried meditation. I'd tried not to be annoyed, but annoyance, as established, was my trigger. Halfway through dessert, Mrs. Ashford's Yule pudding, which somehow tasted like Christmas itself, had been condensed into a single perfect bite. My magic had flared, and the pudding had multiplied. Not dramatically, not explosively, just enough that there were suddenly 7 Yule puddings on the table instead of 2. Rowan had stared at them, then at me. Then he'd very calmly picked up his fork and eaten a bite from each one. Blackberry, he'd said after the third. Interesting. I'm sorry. Don't be, they're all excellent. Another bite. Though the one that tastes like pine needles is concerning. I was thinking about the forest. Ah. He'd made another note. Food generation tied to environmental awareness. Fascinating. And that, the fact that he wasn't angry, wasn't disappointed, just curious, had made my chest tight in a way I couldn't name. Now, we stood in his study, a room that was somehow both cozy and intimidating, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a desk covered in correspondence, going over what he called ground rules. Rule 1, Rowan said, not looking up from his journal. You tell me immediately if you feel your magic building. Don't try to suppress it. Don't try to redirect it. Just tell me. So you can swoop in and save me? His pen paused. So I can help you understand the pattern. Right, because you're so good at understanding chaotic magic. I'm good at understanding control. He finally looked at me, and there was something sharp in his gaze. Which is what you need. What I need is to not be treated like a child. Then stop acting like one. The words hung between us, barbed and bitter. My hands tingled, the warning sign, and I clenched them into fists, nails digging into my palms. That was uncalled for, Rowan said quietly. Yes, it was. He set down his pen, rubbed the bridge of his nose. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. I apologize. I'm not used to this. Babysitting incompetent witches? Working with someone who challenges me. I blinked. I challenge you? Miss Moonwhisper, you've caused more chaos in 1 month than I've dealt with in the past decade. My carefully ordered world has been invaded by ginger snowflakes and soup fountains and puddings that taste like pine needles. Yes, you challenge me. He said it like an accusation. But there was something else in his tone, something that might have been respect. Should I apologize for that? No. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. But you should probably stop calling me Mr. Blackbriar. We're going to be living together for 12 days. Use my name. Rowan. Better. He closed his journal. And I'll stop calling you Miss Moonwhisper. It makes me sound like my grandfather. What will you call me instead? He considered this, gaze tracking over my face like he was cataloging features. Thistle suits you, prickly on the outside, unexpectedly useful if handled correctly. That's the worst compliment I've ever received. Good thing it wasn't a compliment. But his ears did that twitch thing, and I realized, with a jolt that felt like static electricity, that Rowan Blackbriar was amused. Actually amused. By me. Rule 2, I said before I could think too hard about that. You stop acting like I'm going to accidentally burn down your house. Can you promise you won't? No. Then I'll continue to be cautious. He moved to the fireplace, adding another log. But I'll try to be less stern about it. You? Less stern? That's like asking the sun to be less bright. The sun sets every evening, Thistle. And there it was again, that almost smile, gone before I could properly register it. We stood in companionable silence, watching the fire, and I thought, maybe this won't be completely terrible. Then something exploded in the kitchen. Mrs. Ashford shrieked, and Rowan and I both ran. Chapter 5. The kitchen was not, technically, on fire, but it was filled with smoke that smelled like burnt sugar and regret, and Mrs. Ashford was standing in the middle of the chaos wielding a wooden spoon like a weapon. Milo Ashford, you wretched boy! A figure emerged from the smoke, gangly, grinning with raven wings like his mother's but messier, more wild. He was maybe 19, wearing an apron that read, "Kiss the cook, at your own risk," and holding what appeared to be the charred remains of a gingerbread house. It was an experiment, he protested. You were supposed to be making simple gingerbread for the Yule market. I wanted to make them better. He spotted Rowan and me in the doorway and brightened. Oh, perfect. Thistle can help. What? I stepped back. I'm not helping with whatever this is. It's architectural gingerbread. Milo thrust the burnt house toward me like an offering, but the walls keep collapsing. I thought maybe a stability spell. Absolutely not, Rowan said. Why not? She's a witch. She's a witch whose magic is triggered by annoyance, and you are extremely annoying. Rule 1, I reminded him. Don't suppress it. Understand the pattern. I took the gingerbread house from Milo, examining the structure. What were you trying to do? Make it bigger with moving parts. Like a clock tower, but edible. His eyes gleamed with manic creativity. And I wanted it to play music when you opened the door. Mrs. Ashford made a sound like a strangled bird. Milo, we need 300 normal gingerbread houses by tomorrow. Normal is boring. Normal sells. I turned the burnt house over in my hands, feeling the rough edges where the walls had cracked. Milo had actually done impressive work. The windows were delicate sugar panes, the roof tiles individual cookies. It was ambitious, ridiculous, exactly the kind of project that would annoy me into magical competence. I'll help, I said. Rowan's hand landed on my shoulder. Thistle, think about this. I'm thinking that annoying magic is still magic, and if I can't control it in a kitchen surrounded by people, then what's the point? I met his gaze, challenging. Isn't that why I'm here? To learn? His jaw worked. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. Fine. But I'm staying. Wouldn't expect anything less. For the next 3 hours, the kitchen became a workshop. Milo had commandeered every available surface, covering them with cooling racks, piping bags, and bowls of royal icing in varying shades of white and gold. Mrs. Ashford had reluctantly agreed to supervise, which mostly meant she sat at the table offering commentary and eating the broken pieces. I worked on the stability spell, trying to channel my irritation, at the collapsed walls, at Milo's chaotic energy, at Rowan hovering like an anxious shadow, into something useful. The first attempt turned the gingerbread house into a gingerbread castle. The second attempt made it sing opera. The third attempt, after Rowan suggested I try breathing through the annoyance, created a perfect miniature replica of Blackbriar House, complete with tiny sugar windows that actually glowed. Milo whooped. Mrs. Ashford applauded. Rowan stared at it like I'd performed an actual miracle. "How did you do that?" he asked. I have no idea. My hands were still tingling, but it felt different now, less like chaos building, more like energy waiting to be shaped. I thought about what annoyed me most about the collapsed house, which was that it was almost right, almost perfect, the frustration of being so close and missing. I touched the tiny sugar replica. So I thought about what would be perfect, and apparently my magic agreed. Milo was already sketching furiously, muttering about architectural applications and edible cityscapes. Mrs. Ashford had moved to inspect the gingerbread Blackbriar house, making appreciative noises. Rowan hadn't moved. He was still looking at me, expression unreadable. "What?" I asked. "You're not incompetent," he said quietly. "You're unorthodox." "Is there a difference?" "Yes." He reached out, almost touching the gingerbread house, then stopped. Incompetent is a lack of skill. Unorthodox is an excess of creativity. One can be fixed, the other just needs direction. Something warm unfurled in my chest, dangerous and sweet. Was that a compliment, Rowan Blackbriar? His ears twitched. An observation. Sounded like a compliment. Then you heard wrong. But he was smiling, actually smiling small and private, and for the first time since arriving at Blackbriar House, I thought, maybe I could stay here, not just for 12 days, maybe longer. Then Milo knocked over a bowl of royal icing. It splattered across Rowan's very expensive boots, and the moment shattered into laughter and chaos, and Mrs. Ashford wielding her wooden spoon again. Chapter 6. The problem with living in a small village is that privacy is a myth. By the next morning, everyone in Pinecrest Hollow knew I was staying at Blackbriar House, and because it was 5 days until Yule, and because the village thrived on gossip like plants thrived on sunlight, this meant I woke to find my room full of visitors. "Good morning!" chirped a voice. I bolted upright in bed, clutching the quilts. A woman perched on my window seat, literally perched because she had owl wings and talons instead of feet, smiled at me with unnerving cheerfulness. "I'm Wren. I run the Hollow's mail service." She gestured to the basket beside her, overflowing with parcels and letters. "These are for you." "For me?" "Welcome gifts. The village wants you to feel at home." Before I could process this, the door burst open. Mrs. Ashford entered with a tea tray, followed by 3 more women, one with butterfly wings, one with fox ears, and one who appeared entirely human except for the faint glow of magic around her hands. "Thistle, dear, you have visitors." Mrs. Ashford set down the tea. "This is Ivy, Maple, and Daphne. They're from the welcoming committee." "We don't actually have a welcoming committee," Ivy, the fox-eared one, said cheerfully. "But Rowan's been alone in this house for years, and we're nosy." "Concerned," Maple corrected. "We're concerned neighbors." "Who are very nosy," Daphne added, grinning. I pulled the quilts higher, acutely aware that I was wearing a borrowed nightgown and my hair probably looked like a bird's nest. "It's nice to meet you all, but I'm not really—" "Oh, don't be shy." Wren hopped down from the window seat, parcels spilling. "We brought you things." The things turned out to be a hand-knitted scarf that changed colors based on your mood, from Ivy, a jar of honey harvested from very polite bees, from Maple, a set of spell candles that allegedly never dripped wax from Daphne, and approximately 47 letters from various villagers ranging from welcome to Blackbriar House to please don't accidentally enchant my chickens again. This is too much, I protested. Nonsense. Mrs. Ashford poured tea with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. The village takes care of its own. But I'm I'm only here temporarily. Are you, though? Wren tilted her head, owl-like. Rowan doesn't let just anyone stay here. You must be special. I'm a magical liability. You're a witch with untapped potential, Ivy corrected. There's a difference. That's what Rowan said. 4 sets of eyes fixed on me with predatory interest. Oh? Maple leaned forward. What else did Rowan say? Nothing. He's supervising my magic for the council. Mm-hmm. Daphne exchanged a look with the others. And how is that supervision going? Fine, it's fine. We're establishing ground rules. Ground rules, Wren repeated like I'd said something scandalous. How romantic. We're not. I could feel my face heating. It's purely professional. Of course it is, dear. Mrs. Ashford patted my hand, just like it was purely professional when he spent 3 hours last night making sure your room was perfect, and purely professional when he threatened the council with legal action if they tried to exile you, and... He did what? The room went silent. You didn't know? Mrs. Ashford's expression softened. Oh, sweet child. Rowan went to the council the day they filed their complaint, told them if they even suggested exile he'd withdraw his funding for the Yule festival, and his family's been funding that festival for 100 years. I stared at her, something painful lodging in my throat. Why would he do that? Because, Ivy said gently, Rowan Blackbriar looks stern and acts like he'd rather eat glass than admit he cares about people, but when he decides someone is worth protecting, he's absolutely ruthless about it. We barely know each other. You made him smile, Wren said. Last night, in the kitchen, Milo told everyone. Milo needs to learn discretion. Milo is 19 and thinks his mother's employer is secretly pining, Maple said. He's not entirely wrong, though. A knock interrupted whatever I was about to say, probably something defensive and unconvincing. Rowan opened the door without waiting for permission, took in the room full of women and parcels and tea, and his expression went carefully blank. I see you've met the welcome wagon. It's not a wagon, Ivy said, more of a welcoming ambush. You're all supposed to be at the Yule market. We're on our way. Wren gathered her parcels. Just wanted to make sure Thistle felt at home. She's not a stray cat. No, Daphne said, studying him with unnerving intensity. She's much more important than that. They filed out one by one, each offering me a knowing smile or a conspiratorial wink. Mrs. Ashford was the last to leave, and she paused in the doorway. Master Rowan, don't forget, the village tree lighting is tonight. You promised you'd attend. I'll be there. With a date? Her eyes sparkled. With supervision responsibilities, he said firmly. Mm-hmm. Wear the blue coat, dear. It brings out your eyes. Then she was gone, and Rowan and I were alone. He cleared his throat. I apologize for the invasion. The village is enthusiastic. They think we're courting. The village thinks everyone is courting. Last month they tried to set up Cornelius with the baker. Are they wrong about Cornelius? He's 170 years old and considers bread a young person's food. Rowan moved into the room, began gathering the scattered parcels. They mean well. Mrs. Ashford told me what you did, at the council. His hands stilled. She has a very loose understanding of confidentiality. Thank you. It was nothing. It wasn't nothing. I slid out of bed, suddenly needing to be on my feet for this conversation. You didn't have to threaten them. You could have just supervised me and been done with it. I don't do things halfway, Thistle. He set down the parcels, finally looking at me. When I commit to something, or someone, I see it through. The air between us felt charged, like the moment before lightning struck. "Rowan." "The tree lighting is at sunset," he interrupted, voice careful. "I'd appreciate it if you'd accompany me, as part of your supervision." "Is that what we're calling it?" His ears twitched. "Unless you have a better term." I thought about the gingerbread house, about his patience in the kitchen, about the way he'd looked at me when I'd finally created something beautiful instead of chaotic. "I'll come," I said, "but only because Mrs. Ashford told you to wear the blue coat." "She did not—" He stopped, took a breath. "Fine, I'll wear the blue coat. And you have to smile at least once. Thistle." "Those are my terms, Rowan." For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then, slowly, deliberately, he smiled. A real smile, warm and slightly crooked, and my heart did something complicated and inconvenient. "Deal," he said. Chapter 7. The village square at sunset was a study in controlled chaos. Pinecrest Hollow had gathered en masse. Wolves and witches, dragons and pixies, and at least one very confused bear shifter who'd apparently woken from hibernation early, all crowded around the massive Yule tree. It stood 40 feet tall, branches heavy with unlit lanterns, waiting for the ceremonial lighting that would officially begin the 12 days of celebration. Rowan, true to his word, wore the blue coat. It did in fact bring out his eyes. "You're staring," he murmured. "I'm observing." I tugged at my borrowed cloak. Mrs. Ashford had insisted, and it was lined with fur soft as clouds. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Before I could answer, Mayor Thornwick, a stag shifter with antlers decorated in holly, raised his hands for silence. "Friends, neighbors, welcome to the annual Yule tree lighting." His voice boomed across the square. "As tradition demands, we invite our alpha to ignite the ceremonial flame." Rowan tensed beside me. "I hate this part." "Why?" "Because it's theatrical, and I'm not theatrical." "You wear a floor-length wool coat and brood professionally. You're extremely theatrical." His laugh was quiet, almost surprised. Fair point. Mayor Thornwick was still talking. Something about tradition and community and the light returning after the longest night. Rowan stepped forward when beckoned, and the crowd parted, respectful and watchful. He was handed a torch, actual fire, not magical, because apparently the village took its traditions seriously, and approached the tree. That's when things started going wrong. The first lantern he lit sparked correctly, flame catching on the oil-soaked wick, but as he moved to the second lantern, the first one flickered and went out. Rowan frowned, relit it, moved to the third lantern. Both the first and second went out. By the fifth lantern, it was clear something was interfering. Rowan's expression had gone from mildly annoyed to deeply concerned, and whispers rippled through the crowd. "It's cursed! Someone hexed the tree! This is an omen!" I closed my eyes, reaching out with that peculiar sense that all witches had, the ability to feel magic, even when we couldn't see it. And there, tangled in the branches like invisible spider silk, was a knot of frustration magic. My frustration magic. "Oh no," I breathed. "What is it?" Mrs. Ashford appeared at my elbow, Milo in tow. "I think I accidentally cursed the tree." "When?" "Yesterday when I walked past it. I was annoyed about the whole supervision thing and I must have—" I gestured helplessly. "I didn't mean to." Rowan had given up on the torch. He stood beneath the tree, arms crossed, radiating the kind of calm authority that made people instinctively trust him even when things were falling apart. "It seems we have a technical difficulty," he announced. "We'll need to postpone." "Wait!" I pushed through the crowd before I could talk myself out of it. "I can fix it!" The whispers intensified. Rowan's gaze snapped to me, sharp and questioning. "Thistle," he said quietly, "what did you do?" "I may have accidentally left some frustrated magic tangled in the branches." "May have?" "Definitely did." I looked up at the tree, at the 40 feet of cursed lanterns. "But I can undo it." "Probably." probably is not reassuring. It's the best I can offer. Mayor Thornwick intervened, antlers quivering with civic concern. Miss Moonwhisper, we appreciate the offer, but perhaps we should consult. Let her try. Rowan's voice cut through the murmuring. She knows her own magic better than anyone. But the risk is mine to take. He looked at me, and there was something fierce in his expression. Do what you need to do. The crowd went silent. I approached the tree, laying my palm against the rough bark. The frustrated magic pulsed beneath my touch, angry, tangled, exactly like I'd felt yesterday when the ravens had stolen another piece of my chimney. Sorry, I whispered to the tree. I wasn't annoyed at you. You're magnificent. I was just having a bad day. The magic stirred, curious. I thought about Rowan's patience in the kitchen, about Mrs. Ashford's kindness, about Milo's chaos and Wren's cheerfulness and the way the village had welcomed me despite my disasters. I thought about the gingerbread house, the moment when frustration had transformed into creation, and I let go. The magic unraveled like a knot being loosened, flowing from the tree back into me. For a moment it hurt, all that frustration returning, concentrated and sharp, but then it changed, softened, transformed into something warm. I opened my eyes. Every lantern on the Yule tree was lit. Not with regular flame, but with soft golden light that pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. And as the crowd gasped and applauded, tiny sparks of that same light drifted down from the branches. Not fire, not dangerous, just beautiful. "Thistle," Rowan said, and his voice was full of wonder. "What did you just do?" "I fixed it, I think." I stared at my hands, still glowing faintly, or I made it better. I'm not entirely sure. Mayor Thornwick stepped forward, beaming. "My dear, that was extraordinary." The crowd surged around me. Questions, congratulations. Someone pressed a cup of spiced cider into my hands. But through it all, I was aware of Rowan standing just at the edge of the chaos, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. When the initial excitement died down and the village began to settle into celebration, musicians tuning instruments, vendors opening stalls of roasted chestnuts and mulled wine, he approached. "Walk with me?" We left the square, following a path that wound through the gardens toward the forest edge. The sounds of celebration faded to a pleasant hum, and snow began to fall, soft, gentle flakes that caught in Rowan's hair like stars. "You didn't curse the tree on accident," he said finally. "I didn't mean to curse it." "No. You cursed it in the moment. But you uncursed it on purpose. You took the frustration and transformed it into something beautiful." He stopped walking, turned to face me. "That's control, Thistle." "That's luck. It's skill." His hand came up, almost touching my face, then dropped. "I was wrong, earlier. You don't need direction. You need permission." Permission? To trust yourself, to believe that your magic, chaotic, unorthodox, impossible to predict, is exactly what it should be. My throat felt tight. "Rowan, I know this is temporary, the 12 days, the supervision." His gaze held mine, intense and honest. "But I don't want it to be." The world narrowed to the space between us, to the snow falling and the warmth of his presence, and the way my heart was beating far too fast. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I've spent years building a carefully controlled life, and you've disrupted every bit of it, and I'm grateful." "For chaos?" "For you." He smiled, crooked and genuine. "Stay, Thistle. Not because the council demands it, because I'm asking." I thought about Blackbriar House, about Mrs. Ashford's kindness and Milo's chaos and the room that felt like home, about gingerbread houses and Yule trees and the way Rowan's ears twitched when he was amused. "I have 3 conditions," I said. His eyebrows rose. "Of course you do." "1? I get to renovate my cottage, on my own timeline, with help, not supervision." "Agreed." 2. Milo is not allowed in any kitchen I'm working in without adult supervision." "Easily done." 3. You stop pretending you're not happy when I'm around." He went very still. I don't pretend. You do. You smile, and then you stop yourself, like being happy is something you have to earn. I stepped closer, bold with the magic still humming under my skin. But you don't, Rowan. You're allowed to just be happy. For a long moment he didn't move, then slowly he reached out and cupped my face in his hands, rough palms, gentle touch. Then I accept your conditions. His thumb brushed my cheek, all of them, and he kissed me. It was soft at first, tentative, like he was still asking permission even after I'd given it. But then I leaned into him, my hands fisting in that ridiculous blue coat, and the kiss deepened into something warm and certain. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, tiny snowflakes drifted around us, not from the sky, but from my hands, where magic was sparking in celebration. "Did you just make it snow?" Rowan asked, laughing against my mouth. Apparently I did. Unorthodox. That's what you like about me. It's one of many things. He kissed me again, quick and sweet. Come on, Mrs. Ashford will be furious if we miss the feast. We walked back to the square hand in hand, and if the entire village noticed and immediately began gossiping, well, that was just life in Pinecrest Hollow. Chapter 8. Epilogue. 1 year later. The midwinter feast at Blackbriar House had become tradition. Not just for us, though Rowan and I had fallen into comfortable patterns, our lives intertwining like the magical vines I'd convinced to grow around the garden archway, but for the entire village. Mrs. Ashford insisted on hosting, Milo had taken over decorating duties, with strict adult supervision, and somehow our quiet house had become the heart of Pinecrest Hollow's celebrations. I stood in the kitchen, surveying the chaos. The table was laden with Mrs. Ashford's famous honey-glazed ham, my magically multiplied Yule puddings. I'd gotten much better at controlling exactly how many appeared. Milo's architectural gingerbread village, which now included moving parts and a functioning water wheel, and approximately 17 other dishes. You're going to feed the entire forest at this rate, Rowan said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. That's the idea. I leaned back against him, comfortable and warm. Cornelius is bringing half the dragon clan. Wren promised to invite the night owls, and apparently Ivy convinced the Fox family to stop feuding long enough to attend. My quiet, orderly life, he murmured against my hair. You love it. I love you. He turned me in his arms, and the look he gave me was soft and fond. Even when you accidentally turn the drawing room curtains into butterflies. That was one time. And they were beautiful butterflies. They were purple. Purple is a valid butterfly color. He laughed, a sound that had become wonderfully common over the past year, and kissed me soundly. The doorbell chimed, then chimed again. Then someone just started knocking, and Mrs. Ashford bustled past us with a cry of, "They're early! Milo, fetch the welcome cider." The house filled with voices, laughter, the rustle of wings and the stomp of boots shedding snow. Our home, because it was our home now, mine and Rowan's, the place where chaos and control had learned to coexist, welcomed them all. Mayor Thornwick arrived with his antlers decorated in bells. Wren brought her entire extended family of owl shifters. Maple and Daphne had collaborated on a wreath that sang carols. Thankfully, better than my first attempt at musical gingerbread. Even Cornelius showed up, complaining about the cold but accepting 3 helpings of everything. And through it all, Rowan stayed at my side, sometimes in the background, a quiet, steady presence, sometimes pulled into conversation by villagers who'd learned that their stern alpha was actually wickedly funny when you got him talking. Later, after the feast had dissolved into sleepy contentment and most guests had wandered home through the snow, we stood on the balcony of our bedroom. The village below was a scatter of lights, warm against the darkness. Happy? Rowan asked. I thought about the past year, about the cottage we'd renovated together, blending my chaos magic with his careful craftsmanship, about the baking lessons with Mrs. Ashford and the architectural disasters with Milo, about learning that magic didn't have to be controlled, just understood, about the way Rowan looked at me every morning, like I was the best kind of surprise. Yes, I said. Incredibly happy. Good. He pulled me close. Because I have something for you. Rowan, we said no gifts. It's not a gift, it's a question. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, simple silver, with a stone that glowed softly, the same warm gold as the Yule tree lights. Thistle Moonwhisper, he said, and his voice was steady despite the nervousness in his eyes. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my carefully disrupted, beautifully chaotic life with you? I didn't answer with words. I kissed him, and magic sparked around us, not destructive, not wild, just joyful. Tiny lights danced in the air, snow swirled in patterns, and somewhere in the distance, I heard Mrs. Ashford's delighted shriek of, "I knew it!" "Is that a yes?" Rowan asked when we finally broke apart. "That's a yes." He slipped the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Below us, the village began to light up with new magic as word spread. Windows glowed brighter. Music started playing. And I could have sworn I heard Cornelius grumbling something about young people and their romance before demanding another slice of ham. "Ready for more chaos?" I asked. Rowan smiled, that beautiful, genuine smile that I'd worked so hard to earn. "With you? Always." And as midnight struck and midwinter truly began, we stood together on our balcony, watching the magic we'd created, not just in ourselves, but in the community we'd built, shine bright against the longest night. I hope you enjoyed Thistle and Rowan's story. May your own holidays be filled with as much warmth, found family, and only the most manageable amount of magical chaos. Romance Realms.